New numbers regarding wages and job growth around the country.
Job growth by private employers slumped and was much weaker than expected in September. Payroll processing company ADP is reporting 89,000 new private sector jobs created last month. Economists were predicting nearly twice that number. Wage increases appear to be moderating. September pay was up 5.9% from a year ago. ADP says it has been seeing a steady decline in wages in the past 12 months. The monthly employment report is released on Friday. Ginny Cosola, Fox News.
This season's Tony Awards are set. The awards, which mark the best in theater, will take place June 16th at New York's Lincoln Center. The nominations for the 2024 Tonys will be announced April 30th. I'm Lee Silasara. This is Fox News.
Hello, everybody. This is Lawrence Sutton, and we're with the Lawrence County Republican Party. And unfortunately, Brandon Taylor could not be here today. He's under the weather. But we have two very, very special guests with us. We have Stephen Skelton, and he is with the American Bible Project. And then we have good old Jerry Geho. What's going on, Jerry? How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Man, it's so good to have you in here with us today. It's a long time coming.
I've been watching you have fun. I said, I'm getting in on that.
We do have some fun, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Well, I mean, we kind of like to mess around with Democrats a little bit, make them kind of mad.
The reason you can have so much fun is because I'm home praying for you.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Well,
So have a ball, okay?
Somebody's got to pray for me, so that's awesome. So, Stephen, I'm going to tell you something. Your project blows me away with what you're doing, and you are a true American patriot.
Oh, thank you, Lawrence. That's very kind.
And I think it is awesome. And I'm going to start right off out of the book with you. Would you tell us what is the first American Bible?
Yes, it's what everybody wonders. It's what I wondered before I learned the history of the first American Bible and formed the nonprofit First American Bible Project. So at First American Bible Project, we are the keepers of an original First American Bible, which I brought into the studio today, which we actually brought back into print so that we can put these Bibles back in schools. And so what that means is that in our country's history, this is the only Bible approved by the United States Congress. And as history records, when the American Revolution began, America stopped trade with Britain, cutting off our supply of Bibles. And so the first printer for the Journals of Congress, a man named Robert Aitken, he sought to print the first American Bible, and thereby this became the only Bible approved by Congress. And that's the story, how America got the first English Bible made in America, the first King James Bible made in America, the only Bible approved by Congress, the only Bible recommended to Americans by our founding fathers in government. It's also a Bible, this particular one is one that was printed 5 years before the Constitution was a twinkle in George Washington's eye. This Bible, we're talking the very foundation of the nation. And we're proud to take it around, to show it, and to educate people on the first American Bible.
That is awesome. And to everybody on the radio, you can't see this, but I would highly recommend get on YouTube, get on the internet, and come and look at this Bible. I mean, this to me, this is history right here.
Yes.
This is American history right
Yes.
here. Explain to me what you have been doing to bring this Bible into the schools and into our school systems.
Yes, as a historical resource, this First American Bible is actually an illustration of state academic standards that we're already teaching about. Now, so what that means is, if you recall the story that I just told, when the Revolution began, we stopped trade with Britain, and we had cut off our supply of Bibles, so Congress approved the printing of this Bible and then recommended that all Americans read it. So within that story, as it ties into the state academic standards, we're teaching about the economic factors of the American Revolution according to the state academic standards. So this Bible then becomes an object lesson on a international trade item between colonial America and Great Britain. That's how it begins the story. This is an international trade item between colonial America and Great Britain. A little further on in its story, it becomes a domestic trade item, manufactured and sold exclusively in the United States. It's a domestic trade item. A little later in the story, it's an act of the Congress of the Confederation. So these are topics that the teachers are already teaching about according to the state academic standards. And what we do is we provide them with a copy of the First American Bible as well as a state academic standard card that highlights the academic standards this Bible connects to. So that as the teachers are teaching, they'll say, for example, oh, I can see in 2 weeks I'm going to teach standard 4.02. Oh, 4.02 is talking about international trade between colonial America and Great Britain. As you know, for about the first decade of the American Revolution, it was not a military war, it was an economic war. You know, it began with the famous phrase, no taxation without representation, the phrase that lit the fuse, right?
Right.
And then a little later on, it becomes about all of these protests and boycotts and the Stamp Act and the Townsend Acts and the Intolerable Acts. And then a little later, it's the Boston Tea Party, that economic protest over the pricing of tea. And then a little later, it gets up to the embargo, which is, for lack of a better word, the big bomb in the economic war with Great Britain. And at the time, they're talking about the embargo, which is what immediately preceded the firing of the first shots at the battles of Lexington and Concord, which was the start of the military
Shot heard
war.
around the world.
The shot heard around the world. Just before that, when they levied the embargo, this then comes into play as teachers are teaching about the economic factors of the American Revolution. They're able to say, students, today we're talking about international trade between colonial America and Great Britain, and I have an object lesson for you. This is a book that we used to have as an international trade item, which we're going to use as an example of that, and it is the only Bible approved by Congress, but for our purposes today in illustrating this standard, it is an object lesson, a physical representation of an item that used to be traded between colonial America and Great Britain. That's an example of how the teachers are using it in accordance to the standards they're already teaching. We're not adding anything to their plate. They're already teaching according to the standards. We're simply providing them with an object lesson that illustrates the standards.
Okay. What is interesting is how much we actually depended on Britain for our trade.
Yes.
Because during these periods of time, there had to have been numerous printing presses in America at this time. I mean, matter of fact, Ben Franklin owned a printing press even.
Yes.
So what do you think the catalyst was? There were no more Bibles coming in. So this man, Mr. Aiken, is the one that said, I'm going to take this upon myself.
You're exactly right, Lawrence. And so the setting, if you can imagine, is that we cut off our supply of Bibles coming in through trade, only to be reminded that King George maintained a license on the King James Version, which meant that if he said no printers in colonial America could print the Bible, then that was the word. We still had a ton of British soldiers circulating through the country that would enforce the king's laws. And so even though we did have a lot of printers here in America, none of them were going to take up the challenge to publish a First American Bible because it was under copyright with King George, who said you cannot publish the Bible in America. That's one thing that strikes folks as so odd to our ears today, but yes, at the foundation of our nation, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, it was illegal to publish God's word on American soil. At the beginning of its story, it is really probably the greatest example of religious oppression that America has ever suffered. A foreign power told us that we could not print the Bible, and we listened and did not print the Bible. Now, there's an interesting story that goes along with this, which is that Robert Aitken discovered a loophole in the license. And the loophole was that the license only applied to the Old Testament and New Testament together under one cover. But if you took the Old Testament out and published it under its own cover, or you took the New Testament out and published it under its own cover, then the license no longer applied. So In 1777, Robert Aitken gave America its first New Testament in English. It was the King James Version of the New Testament, and Aitken, realizing there was a loophole in the King's license, he actually did provide America not only with its first Bible in 1782, but further back, in 1777, he gave America its first New Testament in English in America as well. Aitken was a huge figure for folks to not have any idea who he is today.
So, that to me is amazing because, we all see John Hancock and the signers of the Declaration of Independence. So we're already a year past where we've given England the middle finger anyway.
That's right, yes. Uh-huh.
And this man put just as big of a target, if not more of a target, on his head, because I'm going to not only give you the middle finger that we're going to separate from England,
that's right,
but I'm going to go against your copyright.
That's right. I'm going to exploit a loophole in your license. You mentioned John Hancock there, and continuing to talk about the accomplishments of Robert Aitken. Aitken is actually the man that preserved the Declaration of Independence.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is that when Congress was getting further into the American Revolution post 1776, they said to themselves, we're going to need to create a record. We're going to need to create a compendium, a collection of all the laws and decrees and resolutions and, yes, the Declaration that founded the country. We're going to need to put those into a book form so that future generations of Americans have any idea how we founded this country. Well, they looked around for printers, and they found Philadelphia printer Robert Aitken, who was willing to become the first printer for the Journals of Congress. So in his act as the first printer for the Journals of Congress, by the very hand of Robert Aitken, was the typeset to preserve Thomas Jefferson's famous words in the Declaration of Independence for future generations of Americans, including you, me, and everybody we know, to know what the Declaration said. That was Robert Aitken that preserved the Declaration in the journals, something that he could have hung for. Certainly, if Great Britain had won, preserving the founding document of a rogue nation would have had him swinging at the end of the same rope that our founders in Congress were swinging from. Nevertheless, he did that, and that is what gave him a solidarity with Congress, which he later was able to use when he wrote them a letter and asked for their approval to publish the first American Bible.
What kind of volume of publications were there when he started?
There were quite a few publications, nothing on the scale of the Bible in terms of its thickness and number of pages, but there was a number of magazines, one-sheets. There were books also that were being printed. Aitken actually printed 10,000 copies of this first American Bible. Today, there's only about 25 in total. 20 of those are behind closed doors. They're in museums or archives or libraries where the public cannot easily access them except for paying for a ticket, perhaps, or a membership. But there are 5 of them, only 5 remaining in the world today, that are in private hands where the person that owns them can do what I've done today, which is bring to you one of the 5 remaining in the world in private hands.
I find this amazing. I'm a history buff, though, and that's the reason I love the Bible so much, because it gives us recorded man's history. But then to have it tied in with this, and there's 5 of them, and you own one of these 5.
That's right. Yeah, the First American Bible Project was very keen on actually securing a First American Bible. And
how did you get it?
It's kind of an interesting story, and it's very unexpected. I had been talking to someone on the phone about the reproductions that we do, and I said, there are other publishers in the past that have done reproductions as well, and today they're very expensive. You can find them on Amazon and on eBay. And as soon as I had said that, I thought, you know what, it's been about 6 months since I actually checked that out, so I don't make myself a liar. I need to go and check out and see if they're actually available on Amazon and eBay. Well, I went to Amazon, and it turns out they were not available at that time. I said, well, I steered you wrong there. Yeah, Amazon. I then went over to eBay, and I put into the search bar Aitken Bible. And I sometimes say that I was looking for a goldfish. I found a whale, because what popped up was an original, and the listing price was $147,000. And I kind of I kind of laughed because I said, "What does the seller think's going to happen? Somebody's going to pull out their MasterCard and say, yeah, I think I got $147,000 on this MasterCard that I just paid it off. So, $147,000 shouldn't be a problem.
Right.
I'm just going to go ahead and put this on.
Well, there are some people that have that type of MasterCard.
They do. They're few and far between.
Yes,
but,
they are.
But they do, yeah. So at any rate, I contacted the seller and asked him the same question, and he said, actually, I'm not expecting anyone to purchase it off of eBay, but what I am expecting to happen is serious buyers will contact me the same way that you have. And I let him know that, he may find someone with a bigger purse that can meet his price. He's not going to find anyone with more passion, because the First American Bible Project exists because of this book. So we have the most passion for it. And in the negotiation, he dropped $27,000. He dropped it down to $120,000, and we began to fundraise for that. We've fundraised $115,000, so we're in the home stretch. No one is worried that we're not going to be able to come up with the remainder.
Right.
But anybody that wants to be a part of that, a part of securing that, is certainly invited to do so, because we're in the final stretch. We're raising the last $5,000.
Okay, so you still have $5,000.
That's true. To raise.
Right. Okay, so with everybody listening right now, how can they contact you?
They could go by firstamericanbible.org. That's the website. This is the First American Bible. That's here in front of us, and the website is firstamericanbible.org, and they can make a donation through there. There's a place they can put a note for what their donation is for, and they can simply say, the original. That's what we're wanting to help secure, the original.
And this man has allowed you, even though you haven't paid for it, to be able to have it.
Yeah, well, we owed, 120, we raised 115, so he's not worried that we're not going to be able to come up with the last
I know that,
five.
but
We just have to do that. Yes,
but that's awesome, because
the person that owns it actually has lent it to us to complete the fundraising of it.
Wow. So how long has this fundraising been going on?
Let's see. We've been going on this for a couple of months now in terms of the fundraising.
Wow. So just a couple of months.
Yes. Yeah. Well, people that get it passionately, and they're willing to support the cause. And the cause being that what we want the book for is not to set this Bible on a shelf and have it collect dust. That's not what's going to happen. Rather, what's going to happen is we're going to take it out into the public. It is the people's Bible. It is America's first Bible. It's the Americans' Bible. So we want to take it to Americans. We want to show them this Bible. We want to tell them their history if they don't know it. So for us, this Bible then is a key to open doors into offices of influence, into political offices, into school offices, into business offices. It is a way to bring attention to our history, correctly told, and it's also a way to bring attention to the mission and the cause of the First American Bible Project, which is putting more First American Bibles back into more schools. So again, for us, the book is an active tool. For us, it is a way to educate the public, and then also to encourage the public to support putting more First American Bibles into more schools.
You said that there is it's in the standards, the state standards.
We're tying into the state standards, exactly, yes.
Do you have a guideline study guide to go along with it?
No, because again, we're not telling them to teach anything other than what the state is already telling them to teach. That's one of the things that has been so popular about the use of it. It doesn't add anything to their plate. It would be as if there's a very dear organization that we work with called the 917 Society.
Yes, they hand out the Constitution.
That's exactly right.
And the Declaration,
That's exactly right. So the 917 Society is a wonderful organization. It puts constitutions into the hands of 8th graders. Everyone can find that online at 917society.org to help to put the founding documents back in front of the future of our country. At any rate, it would be as if we went to a teacher and we said, we're going to give you a constitution, and we hope you can find a place to use it. And they would say, well, of course I can find a place to use it. It's in the academic standards. We have to teach according to the academic standards. So you're just giving us an object lesson that we can use to help the students take a concept and make it more concrete, because they can actually hold it in their hand. It's the same thing with the First American Bible. We illustrate how it ties into the standards they're already teaching, not adding anything to their plate, just putting in their hands an object lesson that they can use to illustrate what they're already talking about.
So it's a resource for the teacher and
Yes,
the student.
that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, we do them into the hands of teachers and in the hands of librarians, so that if a student says, "Wow, I had never heard about the only Bible approved by the United States Congress. My dad would love to see that. My mom would love to see it. I would love to write a paper on it." The teacher says, "Great, there's one waiting for you in the library.
go.
You can go and
Okay.
check it out just like you would any other resource."
So it's accessible not just to the teacher,
But also
to the
the
students, and the students can take it home.
That's exactly right.
They could share it with their family.
They can.
So if anybody had a curiosity, they could fill that curiosity with actually reading it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
So having this Bible and knowing the history of this, and it was a King James printed Bible.
That's right. It's King James. And
So what have you noticed any differences between this Bible, the King James Bible here, and if we went and bought a King James Bible at Walmart today?
surprisingly, it is the same, which is to say that it's 1769 King James. Everyone thinks of the King James in terms of 1611. If we
Right.
went to try to read a 1611 King James, we would find that very difficult to decipher today.
Correct.
So the King James underwent certain additions where they modernized language. Well, they hit 1769 and it became the gold standard. So if you go to Walmart and you pick up the King James Version, it will actually be 1769 King James. If you went on Amazon or anywhere else and got King James, it would be 1769 King James. This is 1769 King James. If we turn to John 3:16, we would find the familiar words, "For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life." It's the King James we all know and love. Now, that being said, there's a letter called the long S. And the long S is a letter they used in the Declaration of Independence. They used it in the Constitution. They used it in this Bible. And the long S, to our eyes today, looks like a funny F, as in Frank. So it's an S as in Sam. It looks like an F as in Frank. That sometimes causes folks to stumble as they're reading it along. However, if you spend 5 minutes aware of what the long S is, you very quickly adapt. Your eyes are able to very easily read along with it. So that is the one kind of quirk of typography, that it makes use of the long S, which again was used in the other significant founding documents of the day.
Well, it's like the letter J. The letter J didn't exist, until not that long ago, actually, and a lot of people are not aware of that. So that's encouraging. So we are dealing with language in our Bibles today, the King James Bible today, from
1769 King James.
Same as this one.
That's right, yes. This one, of course, was printed in 1782. It's really a sweet spot in terms of our country's history, and being 1782, it's a couple of things. One thing is, it's 6 years after the Declaration. So if you think about it, this Bible that we're in the presence of right now,
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't get closer to the foundation of our nation, short of going to Washington, D.C. and standing in front of the Declaration.
I know.
You couldn't get closer to an original founding document of our country, this one that's right here a foot from you and me. So it comes 6 years after the Declaration. It comes 5 years before the Constitution was published. This Bible is in that kind of sweet spot there at the very foundation of the nation. But also, interestingly, 1782 was, in our history, a year after the Battle at Yorktown, which effectively, from a military perspective, ended the American Revolution.
Right.
Battle at
right.
Yorktown. However, 1782 is also a year before the Treaty at Paris, which officially ended the American Revolution. So it does occupy, again, these kind of very sweet spots that we stand with when we stand in the presence of this first American Bible.
So the Bible that you guys are printing now is a exact copy of this.
Yes, it's a page-for-page reproduction. And let me tell you what, the way that we are able to have a page-for-page reproduction is, as valuable as this is, and as in awe as we are to sit here next to history and stand on this historical holy ground that we stand on as we're in the presence of a document that comes from the founding of our nation.
Right.
In order to create this, someone took their copy and cut it apart, page for page, so that it could be laid flat and the page could be either photographed or scanned on each side so that a print file could be created and we could bring it back. I used to say somebody flushed their original First American Bible by cutting it apart page for page. Someone corrected me one time, and I never will forget it. They said they didn't flush anything. They invested it. They invested it in the future of our country, that we could bring it back.
That gives me goosebumps all over right there.
Yeah.
That is amazing that someone would have done it. How long ago was it that they did it? Because now I'm thinking you could just take a picture of it and print it now.
But it wouldn't be flat. The pages wouldn't be flat. What they had to do was lay it flat so that there was no wrinkle, there was no creep into the
So when you reprinted it, when it's been reprinted, it is the exact.
Yes, we didn't create anything that's on the pages of the Old Testament, New Testament. It is the image. It is the very image, either photographed or scanned. We have it digital, yeah.
Okay.
It's digital now that we reprint these
I
from.
just noticed the print was very clear in there.
It is very clear, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's very clear, guys, with your own eyes here in the presence of it. You can see how clear it is. If you
Yes.
cared to lean very much closer, you would
Yes.
start to read words. What's amazing is that ink was put on that page 241 years ago at the founding of the nation, and here we are actually able to still read it today.
Wow. You know, I've said this on our program numerous times. To me, the greatest book that we have is the Bible. And the second greatest thing ever printed is our Constitution and the Declaration of Independence.
Yes, yes.
And we hear so much, and this is why I'm just fascinated with this, because we always hear so much about separation of church and state,
Sure.
which is a lie. It's with how they tell you it's separation of church and state, because you know what? I have a copy of my Constitution right here.
And did you find separation of church and state
I
in
have
the Constitution?
never found that.
No.
So tell us, how have we gotten there?
Well, we're all the time told that our founders believed in a separation of church and state, and someone should have told the founders, because we have a First American Bible. We have a Bible approved by Congress. So how can there have been a separation of church and state that our founders believed in if they also approved and recommended this Bible to all Americans? Well, the fact of the matter is that the separation of church and state is so badly understood today. If we go back to the founding of the nation, what our founders understood as a separation of church and state is exactly what's articulated in the First Amendment, that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That's two restrictions against the government. That's two restrictions against the government, no restrictions against the church, no restrictions against people of faith practicing their faith, regardless of the job they find themselves in, whether they are a politician or a judge or a school teacher, for example. So, with the founders understanding that a separation of church and state did not mean a separation of faith and state, which is the misunderstanding that we have confused ourselves with today. We think what it means is a separation of church and state means that football coach can't pray on the 50-yard line of the school football field because of why? Well, because of the separation of church and state. And then the Supreme Court weighed in on Kennedy v. Bremerton last summer and said, think again. It's not about some misunderstanding of the separation of church and state, which has no legal bearing at all, but rather it's a First Amendment issue. And the coach does have his First Amendment rights. He does not check those rights at the school door. He still maintains his First Amendment rights, and he's free to pray on the football field, the same as anyone else would be free to do anything else from the middle of the football field. You'd be able to voice your support of climate change or whatever the issue may be. Just because the topic is faith does not mean suddenly your First Amendment rights are stripped away. So at any rate, being that that is not what our founders understood a separation of church and state to mean, we can talk about what they did understand it to mean. When Jefferson invoked the separation of church and state in the letter to the Danbury Baptist Association in 1802, what he was saying to them was, you don't have to worry about the government interfering with your church. Well, the ways that a government can interfere with a church are, I'm sure, numerous, but we can highlight two that seem very obvious. If you belong to a church the government supports, you get a tax break. If you belong to a church the government doesn't support or endorse, then you pay more in taxes. That's one very easy way to understand that the government as a business entity and the church as a business entity should be kept apart. Again, what it does not mean is that there should be a separation of an individual practicing his faith, even if he works in the public sector.
Wow. I tell you, this is why we do this radio program, Jerry, is to bring about information like this. I mean,
I've been fascinated. I've just been listening.
I have too. I mean, I have too. The fact is as much as I like to think of myself as a historian, I have only just read about it in glancing. I've never really paid attention to the actual history of it. And to see this right here now, folks, is just, it's incredible. I've never been in front of a book that I have had more reverence for. Just the fact that it's the Bible. But to have one of the first 10,000 copies of the Bible that was ever printed in this country.
Yes, yes. Yes, it's awe-inspiring. It really is. And you know, it's one of the reasons it's awe-inspiring is that we don't know the story, as you were just saying before. It is incredible to me, the number of people that I'll relate the story to who are people that you would think would have an idea. I myself, by the time I heard about the first American Bible, I had been in publishing for 20 years and had never heard this particular publishing story, which again is an antidote to what ails us today. And I'm only talking about our history. Understanding our history correctly is an antidote for what ails us today.
It absolutely is. And I've always have heard this, the victors are the ones that write the history.
Right.
So, and they're going to write it based upon their way they looked at their events. I mean,
right.
Could you imagine how the history would have looked like if Germany had won
Right.
the war or Japan had won the war?
Right.
Let's think how that history could have looked like. How did our founding fathers, how did they get involved with the printing of this? Because I would imagine Mr. Aiken had this on his heart. This had to be something that God put it on his heart to do. But we still had founding fathers that would have had to have gotten involved for this to have happened.
Oh, that's right. And the story there, again, once it's taught correctly, it further erodes our misunderstanding of a separation of church and state that our founders supposedly believed in. And again, I'm saying that today we don't mean separation of church and state. We mean separation of faith and state, where we're wanting to limit how people can be influenced by their faith. We don't want a faith influence, particularly on governance, and we think that somehow the separation of church and state addresses that. It does not. It does not at all. So correctly understood, going back to the founding of the country, our founders had a keen interest in providing the Bible to America. So the way that it happened was, when that embargo took place and cut off our supply of Bibles that were coming in from Great Britain, and Great Britain was the only place America received its Bibles from. King James Version of the Bible, Great Britain's the only place that we got it from. Well, not long after that, we began to experience the Bible shortage in America, and a couple of pastors wrote a letter to Congress. This was very early. This was like 1778, 1779, something like that.
Because by this point, we were no longer having Bibles imported to us.
Yeah, that stopped in 1776 with the embargo, right around that time frame. Stopped receiving Bibles in, couldn't print our own.
Right.
And so people that wanted Bibles couldn't get them, and Bibles that were destroyed couldn't be replaced. You know,
and I don't think
that fell apart or whatever.
Right, and I don't think
lost.
people understand at this this point, we were under enemy occupation.
Sure, absolutely,
almost.
yes.
So it's not like they're across the sea and we're going to print this Bible. We had troops there. As a matter of fact, I missed this opportunity earlier, but the shot heard around the world was actually fired by a pastor
that
was
really?
leading his congregation.
Wow. Okay,
So,
I did not know that little
yes.
tidbit of history.
Yes, and you've heard about the Black Robe Brigade.
Sure, right.
Okay, well, see, that kind of started the Black Robe Brigade. The actual shot heard around the world, and I forget the pastor's name, but it was done by a pastor, and he took his congregation. And the reason why, and I forget, I want to, if I say it, I'm probably wrong, but you can, everybody, we all have Google, and we can look this up. But excuse me, but they were like protecting like John Hancock and Paul Revere, that the British soldiers were actually looking for them, and the British soldiers had actually came to take away the firearms as well. And the pastor says, not on my watch are you going to take away my firearms. And I'm pretty, we have the First Amendment, obviously, okay, and our founding fathers put the First Amendment, but without the Second Amendment, we have no other amendments. The Second Amendment's what gives our Constitution its teeth, and we've gone away from that. Now everybody wants to say, well, our Second Amendment is for hunting or shooting purposes. No, it was for tyrants.
Right.
Is what it was for.
Yes.
And so I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want people to understand that this Bible, when he was doing this, we were under enemy occupation here.
That's right. There's a great kind of apocryphal story that Aitken actually had to take the plates that had been created to print the Bible, and as the soldiers advanced, he had to hide them under a barn, so that the soldiers did not discover that they were illegally printing the King's Bible, the King James Version of the Bible. Again, it's a story that's told, but its historicity is a little in doubt there. But it's a great dramatic image at any rate. But to talk about how the founders then, our founders in Congress, how they got involved in this Bible is to catch us up on the story that we had cut off our supply of Bibles and we couldn't print our own. So a group of pastors wrote a letter to Congress and told them, we're running out of Bibles. Congress needs to act to get some Bibles printed. So a small committee that included John Adams, wrote a letter out to several Philadelphia printers that were asking them about their ability to publish the Bible. One of those printers was Robert Aitken.
So I'm going to beat a dead horse here. So our founding fathers were talking with pastors, and they are involved with getting Bibles printed by contacting these printers.
Yes.
Again, where is separation of church and state?
Exactly.
The church is actually petitioning our founding fathers to have Bibles printed.
That's right. That's right. You know what? If I'm given the option of choosing between the misunderstanding of the separation of church and state or understanding our history correctly, I'll take understanding our history correctly every time.
Can I ask a question about the landscape of history?
Yes.
I went to a really great seminary that had a really in-depth study of church history, and I don't remember anything mentioned about this, even though it was very detailed. If we were to go into our colleges across the country, UT, Harvard, whatever, in history, is this mentioned in their outline of history in the Revolution, or is it by chance it happens?
Well, I can only take an indication from the response I get all the time, which is people say, how have I never heard about this before? How do I not know the history of the first American Bible? Which, again, Google it. Google Aitken Bible. Google First American Bible. It's out there. The history has been known for years. But I do think that we're at a certain time in our history now where it strikes us as, no pun intended, revolutionary to think that our founders actually approved and recommended the first American Bible. So now it catches more attention.
And looking to get it printed even.
Yes, they did. And so John Adams, for goodness sake, second president of the United States, when he's a congressman, he writes this questionnaire out to Philadelphia printers. One of the Philadelphia printers that receives it is Robert Aitken. So there exists the possibility that what Aitken did subsequently in terms of printing the first New Testament in English in America around about 1777, and also later printing the first American Bible in 1782, that it was actually inspired by the man who would become the second president of the United States, John Adams, because it was Adams that was involved in the effort, the small little cadre of the congressmen that got together to send out the questionnaire to the Philadelphia printers. As it turned out, the Philadelphia printers didn't have the paper that was required, and they couldn't import the paper that was required, and perhaps they didn't have the machinery that was required for a book this big with the Old Testament and New Testament together under one cover. For whatever reason, it came back that it was fruitless. They weren't going to be able to do it at that time.
Or it was fear.
It could have been. It could certainly have been fear. It could certainly have been the fact that, as you mentioned, we were an occupied country.
Because Robert Atkins found a way to do it, didn't he?
He certainly did. Yes, he did. Now, again, remember that when we reach 1782, we're a year after the battle at Yorktown.
Right.
So we've defeated them militarily.
But before then, he was printing the New
Testament. He was indeed.
And what year was that?
1777. He did it for, I think, 5 years, from 1777
So there you go.
Yes, right. Yeah, he was doing it.
So to me, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't want to.
Fearless.
He was fearless.
Yeah, absolutely.
He found a way.
He found a way.
Where other people found a way not to do it.
That's exactly right, Lawrence.
Can you imagine the problem with having the printing equipment then, which was massive?
Yes.
And the supplies and all this?
Can you imagine
and
that
he tried to hide it? Trying to hide this.
Yes.
What a guy!
We had enemy soldiers on our land that were pillaging. They were
burning
and everything else.
Yes.
And we don't know this, but I'm going to tell you, it doesn't surprise me, because Brandon had two different people that he was training. Mm-hmm. And with what he does for his work. Mm-hmm. And they were both history majors with college degrees. Mm-hmm. And I'll ask you this question, because he asked them this question. He goes, who is the single most influential person in history?
Okay. Yes.
What's your answer?
Jesus Christ.
They couldn't give him an answer because they weren't taught that.
Yeah.
History majors.
Right.
I'm not talking somebody that has a liberal science degree.
And listen, it is not evangelizing. It's not proselytizing for us to say that. That is simply a matter of the influence that Christ had on Western culture, and indeed around the world, particularly Western culture, though.
Even an atheist will agree with that.
Yes, yes.
I mean, irrefutable proof that Christ existed. Now, it's up to you to decide, was he a liar? Was he crazy? Or was he God?
Right.
That is your decision to make at that point.
Right.
But is irrefutable proof that Jesus Christ walked this earth and had more influence in the history of the world, more than Buddha, more than George Washington, more than anybody else you can think of.
Certainly. It's well documented from extra biblical sources. History is my thing, but it's well documented from extra biblical sources, which would be sources outside of the Bible. We're talking about Josephus, the Jewish historian, who documented that Christ walked the earth. Tacitus, the Roman historian, who did the same. Lucian, Pliny the Younger. There's plenty of extra biblical sources that tell us that Christ did indeed live and walk the earth, and his followers then changed the world.
That's correct. And, we all heard of Alexander the Great, but there is 100 times more things written. About
documentation.
Jesus, documentation, thank you. Not written, but documentation from those periods of time of Jesus Christ more than him.
Yes.
But everybody says, well, Alexander the Great existed.
Right.
And that's the reason atheists, they cannot deny who Christ was, that he was here on this earth.
Right. We believe in Julius Caesar. We believe in Alexander the Great. We believe in Suetonius. We believe in a number of figures from ancient history. And all of those have less proof for their existence than Jesus Christ has.
Right. And that's why this is so important.
And again, it's not evangelizing, it's not proselytizing. It is simply a matter of the historical record. That's simply what it is.
Well, that's what I said. People that are listening now, you can make that decision. That's what I say. You got three choices. He was either a liar, he was crazy, or he was who he said he was. And that's up for you to decide. And you know what? Here's the thing. It's like anything else. If it's up for us to decide, was Alexander really great? I'm playing on words here, and I'm kind of being sarcastic here. Right. But you are given that ability in school to decide these things.
Yes.
And I think the same thing that's even more important than anybody else. We should have put our country first, which we haven't been doing. And this Bible shows us where the fallacies have been coming from.
Yes.
It's fascinating. I know originally you were only supposed to have been on here with us for 15 or 20 minutes, I think Brandon said, but I hope you don't mind if I take the whole hour.
Let's do that, yes.
Because
time flies.
Time flies. And this is I'm going to tell you something. Our radio program, we always say it's the fastest hour on radio because we only have 10 minutes left.
Yes.
Tell us some other things that you want to get out there and you want our listeners to know.
Well, I think that probably one of the helpful things might be for folks that do believe in the cause of putting the Bible back into school in the way that we're doing it, which again is history. We are not expecting for teachers to magically become preachers.
No.
That is not what this is about. This is simply providing them with an authentic reproduction of a historical resource, which is the only Bible approved by Congress, the only Bible recommended to Americans by the American government. So in understanding that what we're doing here is completely within the guidelines of the state academic standards, that may encourage them, embolden them to say, yes, we do want to put the first American Bible back into our schools. And if they are interested in putting the first American Bible back into their schools, or even owning their own copy of the first American Bible so that they can spread the word about the first American Bible, I'll point them to the website. And again, the website is firstamericanbible.org. So if you go by firstamericanbible.org, you'll be able to do a deep dive into the history that we've been talking about here today, even more than we've had time to deal with today.
Yes.
There's a great George Washington tie-in. The father of our country wanted to hand out the Aitken Bible to all of his departing Continental Army soldiers. However, by the time the word reached him about the existence of the first American Bible, a third of them had already been dismissed, and Washington knew he would have to get budgetary support from Congress approved to be able to purchase the Bibles.
Hang
so
on.
instead, he wrote a letter back to Aitken and his friend saying, I would love to do it. It would have been a real honor to hand out the Bible to all of my departing soldiers, but word has reached me too late.
I'm sorry. I'm going to be sarcastic here, okay? But he needed to get a budgetary for Bibles to hand out, and it had to go through a budgetary committee.
Right.
Wow, how things have gone sideways now.
Right. That they wouldn't even consider it. It wouldn't have even been a thought. It wouldn't have been a possibility.
But like I said, we'll just go hand Ukraine $40 billion.
Right, exactly, yes, right.
We won't build the wall. We will hand out, money to people that are coming into this country legally, but we won't even take care of our own troops.
Sure.
I mean, sorry, I'm getting political.
No, I hear you.
But and because we're getting political, I heard something that and I shouldn't say it shocked me. It didn't shock me. I was just really glad to hear it, and I want people to understand this is that Paige Wally, our senator, is instrumental in helping getting these Bibles in.
Senator Wally is a man of character. He is also a student of history. And so those two things being combined caused him to want to be involved with the First American Bible Project. And we are profoundly grateful for Senator Wally's involvement.
That's awesome. And I would imagine that Senator Hensley and
Doc
I
is
call
also.
I call him Joey. I mean, he's so approachable.
Yes.
He's actually my doctor too.
Wonderful.
I mean, love Joey to death, but I would imagine Joey's involved in this.
He is also one of our supporters as well, and he's done tremendous things in getting the Bible back into schools within his district as well.
You know, I tell you, this is awesome. So I got to ask this. There's the Bible there.
Yes, that's right.
Instead of me ordering it, can I buy that from you?
You certainly can.
Okay, because I want to go home with that.
Great, wonderful.
And I want everybody to get online and get this Bible. I mean, I'm sitting here. I mean, I probably have 20 Bibles at the house.
That's right.
I even have a Gutenberg Bible.
Oh, wow.
Okay. You know, not the original, obviously,
Sure.
but I have a copy of it, and I would like to have a copy of this, even though I probably 75% of my Bibles are King James Bibles.
Yes.
I mean, I would love to have that
Yes.
because of what this is.
Yeah.
So people can go to the website. They can order the Bible.
Yes.
They can also help put Bibles in their schools too, can they not?
Absolutely, they can. In fact, that's how it happens. It's individuals within the community that do rally to the cause of putting the Bible back into schools, that go on the website, that call into the nonprofit, and that say we would like to sponsor Bibles to go into our schools. We do a fundraising for the county, and once we've reached the fundraising goal, we then disperse the Bibles into the schools.
That's amazing. That's just totally awesome.
I've got a daughter that's a teacher. Christmas is coming.
Yeah, I know. I'm
Christmas is coming.
We'd never have dead air on this,
No.
but I am so speechless for what you are doing.
Yes. You'll there's a historical preface that we did. The first 16 pages of the Bible are actually the historical preface that covers in depth the history of the first American Bible. And immediately after the historical preface, we included, as Robert Aitken did include in his, the official congressional resolution.
Yeah.
So the congressional resolution is actually found within the original Bible, also within our reproductions here. And that's where Congress not only approves the printing of the Bible, and by the way, I think we were talking about this before. When Robert Aitken wrote a letter to Congress to explain his desire to publish the first American Bible, he actually named the one location that the Bible should be printed for, and only one location. He didn't say it should be for churches. That wasn't the location, although that may seem obvious that Bibles should be printed for churches. It wasn't churches. Homes. He could have said, the Bible should be printed for homes. He didn't say the Bible should be printed for homes. Hospitals? No, he did not say the Bible should be printed for hospitals. The one place that Robert Aitken named to Congress that this Bible, the first American Bible, should be printed for is schools. That's the only place that he named. So that when Congress approved, in their language, the pious undertaking of Mr. Aitken, what they were approving was this Bible being printed for the use in schools. Now, I don't know how to tie everybody together with the founding of our nation any better than to say this. So the intention that was first stated to our founding fathers, that this Bible should be put into schools, is being fulfilled by us in our time.
Wow. It's coming full circle.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And again, where's separation of church and state here?
That's right. Yes.
Where's it at?
The total misunderstanding, the figment of our imagination. Although at the same time, it has had the force of infecting our thought today so that we are hesitant to exercise our First Amendment rights when it comes to faith. We're hesitant to exercise our First Amendment right when it comes to faith because of this made-up boogeyman, the separation of church and state. We have so badly mangled it. I think that some people have probably weaponized it. They have probably turned it intentionally so that people think it means you shouldn't be able to publicly express your faith if you work in the public sector, that's what the separation of church and state means. It's not what it means at all. It has absolutely no legal weight at all. People should go and read the opinion that was written on Kennedy v. Bremerton.
Yeah, I want you to bring that up. I mean, can you talk about that?
Sure. So Kennedy v. Bremerton is the case that was decided by the Supreme Court last summer. And what it involved was Coach Joseph Kennedy, who was a football coach at Bremerton High in Bremerton, Washington. That's
yes.
right, in Bremerton, Washington. And Coach Kennedy had a habit. And his habit was to pray on the 50-yard line of the football field after games. times. It attracted a little bit of attention. Some of it was unfavorable attention because someone complained to the school board, and the school board did not renew Coach Kennedy's contract the following year. And so Coach Kennedy was left jobless. The reason that was given was because of his frequent praying on the 50-yard line and the school board's concern that he was violating the separation of church and state. Right. That's what the Supreme Court did.
Yeah,
Lawrence,
they laughed.
They kind of laughed and they said, well,
I would feel very sorry for that school board right now. I mean, there's a lawsuit that.
Well, in fact, the end result of it was that I think they reinstated him to his job, which he was at for a very short period of time, because in the meantime, he's moved from Bremerton, Washington, down to Florida. He no longer lives there. But he resumed his job in accordance with the Supreme Court ruling for a short period of time, and he got a payout as well from the school board.
And he should have.
And he should have. He certainly should have. So at any rate, what I am saying is I encourage folks to Google Kennedy v. Bremerton, to go and research that, because it completely turns upside down this misbegotten notion that we have that a separation of church and state in fact means a separation of faith from the individual in the public sector, that they cannot pray at will, they cannot talk about God. That's a falsehood, and Kennedy v. Bremerton turns that completely on its head.
Wow. We are almost done. I want to thank the Republican Party of Lawrence County for giving us this opportunity and help funding us and paying for this radio program. God bless everybody that's listened to us. Thank you so much, Stephen. Jerry, thank you so much for coming in.
Glad to be here.
Bye-bye, everybody.
In contact with Rogers, anything like that, Coach?
The Rich